Well, if you are from Morgantown or ever stayed or been in Morgantown for a while, you've heard the name Earl Core. You may have seen his name embossed on the highway or the road named for him, which runs through Morgantown and Saberton and includes such important landmarks as the newspaper office. You may have seen his name on the site at West Virginia University, adjacent to the Coliseum, named for his prestigious knowledge of wildlife. And you may have seen his name connected with the most important award given yearly in Monongalia County by the Chamber of Commerce, the Earl Core Community Service Award. However, if you're from Morgantown, you may not have heard of the name of former police chief James G. Hunter. But today, we want to tell you about these two gentlemen and their stories and invite you to two special programs that will be occurring on the last two Sundays of June at the Morgantown First Christian Disciples of Christ Church on the corner of Grand and Coben. On June the 19th, we will rededicate the narthex window in memory of James G. Hunter, first dedicated on February the 16th, 1957. This year, however, we plan to place a plaque for this event. Speaking on Chief Hunter's life will be the now present police chief, Ed Preston, who is uniquely involved in preserving the Morgantown police history. This day will also mark Father's Day, and I'll be impersonating the Reverend Fletcher Golden, the father who inspired Father's Day. So we invite you on June the 19th. Then on June 26th, we will dedicate this room, the space adjacent to the sanctuary, as the Dr. Earl L. Core Library. Members of the church will be celebrating this day. This individual deserves a room for him, and First Christian Church, as he was a member, will be doing that. So we invite you to both of these services, June the 19th for James G. Hunter and June 26th for Dr. Earl Core. And welcome to our program of First Christian Church Disciples of Christ, where we have a heart for people and a heart for the heart of Morgantown. Through our TV program, we want to share the church in its four phases of music, message, ministry, and Morgantown. Let's get started with a special selection from the choir.
Sing for joy to
beautiful window that you see as you drive by First Christian Church is the narthex window dedicated to former police chief James G. Hunter on February the 17th, 1957. It was presented by generous gifts of the Morgantown Fraternal Order of Police and friends. Police Chief James Hunter was born December 26, 1896, and died December 26, 1955. And he was a member of the First Christian Disciples of Christ. A little bit about his life and the importance of his life, and why we are rededicating the window on June the 19th, which we invite you out to on Father's Day at 10:45 at First Christian Church, Disciples of Christ. Because we did not put a plaque up at that time, and we think the interest of the people of Morgantown and Monongalia County and throughout the nation and all fraternal orders of police to honor special individuals needs to be seen, needs to be noticed, and needs to be shared. James Hunter was born December 26, 1896 in White House, Pennsylvania, to Louis L. and Annabelle Hunter. He had an older brother, Clayton, who was born 7 years before in 1889. The Hunters came to Morgantown in the early 1900s and settled in at the Christian Church, which was then located on Spruce Street. As you can see, there was a good attendance, and for special events, many people came out. Eventually, both James and his brother Clayton were active members of the church, becoming both elders and deacons. Clayton was a streetcar motorman, and in later years, his grandchildren donated the pulpit Bible that is used today, and Mrs. Clayton Hunter provided the pulpit. Mr. and Mrs. James Hunter had no children but one, and that one died little over a year of age with spinal meningitis. The 1920s were very formidable for Morgantown and the police department. Earl Corey, in his book, suggests that this was indeed the Roaring Twenties, with Reverend Van Voorhis as the minister at the church, which later the Van Voorhis Road was named for him. In 1919, prior to the 20s, the Volstead Act was passed, which was a popular name for the National Prohibition Act over President Woodrow Wilson's veto. The act established a legal definition of intoxicating liquors, as well as the penalties for enforcing them. Well, while Prohibition was successful in reducing the amount of liquor consumed, it stimulated the underground of organized and widespread criminal activity, and it was very tough to enforce. And during this time, James Hunter, as a police officer, was one of the people that had to enforce that. And through the 30s, as it continued, and through the 30s, Prohibition lost its advocates one by one, with advocacy of personal liberty, new tax revenues, and the scourge of organized crime. During the 30s, of course, the Depression not only hit the church, but it hit the police department as well. The church couldn't pay the minister, so the minister had to go out and, for his extra income, worked in welfare. And the fire department was deputized, because of the lack of money, to become police officers. And so it was a unique situation during the Depression for Morgantown, but James Hunter continued to remain on the police force. Then in 1933, the ratification of the 21st Amendment repealed the 18th Amendment on the prohibition of liquor. Now during this time, a great event happened in Morgantown. It wasn't a great event, but it was a significant event, and many of you have heard about it, and that was the Great Fire of 1927 that had over $2 million worth of damage. It would have been considerably more, except that the records show that James G. Hunter and his partner sounded the alarm on the fire of that day in 1927 that prevented the rest of Morgantown from going up in flames. He received credit for that work. He continued to rise through the ranks of the police department, and in June of 1955 became the police chief. Unfortunately, he would only be police chief for 6 months, from June until almost the end of December of 1955, when he died. But the police force, the Fraternal Order of Police, and others thought so much of him and his efforts that money was raised to dedicate this window as the new First Christian Church was taking place and was being built with its dedication in February of 1957. So over a year and a half, funds were raised for this spatial window to commemorate the life of James G. Hunter. And on Saturday, February the 16th, 1957, a dedication was held. The Fraternal Order of Police Judge President Richard E. Davies gave the address. City Manager Elmer W. Prince spoke afterwards and dedicated Chief James G. Hunter as a man of impeccable character at the time of his death. So Chief Preston, thank you for being so kind to Bill Stockwell and I and talking to us about Chief Hunter, who many years ago served very briefly as the Chief of Police for a few months. You love history and you've done a marvelous job here. Tell us first of all a little bit about the history of the police department and the effort that you've taken to kind of resurrect it.
Well, I was fortunate enough to have some students from WVU assist in doing a history project as part of one of their capstone studies. Right. And we established the history of the department from its actual official formation in 1901, from its first appointments of the chief of police and the officers, and we've carried it through into modern day. Did a lot of research in newspapers and other periodical literature, some wonderful books, several written by Earl Core, and those books took us in other directions. We solicited information from surviving members of the department and surviving family members of folks that had worked here at the department over the years. And as part of that process, we were able to start collecting, and we're still continuing to collect information and the stories of the past about the officers and the folks that have worked here or part of Morgantown, or some of the significant events that were going on at the time.
One of the significant things to the church is the window that's dedicated to former police chief James Hunter before he died in 1955 on the day of his birthday, and what the FOP did in order to keep alive his memory by dedicating a window. You've done some research on Captain Hunter, more so than both Bill and I combined in the whole church. So tell us briefly some of the things that you've found out about Chief Hunter.
Well, he came onto the department during a time when the department was very, very small. It was a chief and roughly 6 officers during that time frame. He worked in the department through some of the most tumultuous times in the city of Morgantown and in America. He worked through the Great Depression. He worked through the Prohibition. He worked through the periods when there was a lot of organized crime and gambling in the Morgantown area. And he stayed at that job for well over 30 years and eventually became the chief of police. You know, one of the most significant things that he did as a patrolman was that while he was on patrol one night, he found a fire starting to rage out of control, and he sounded the alarms, and he was able to save many lives and many millions of dollars worth of property damage. The fire alone caused over $2 million of property damage in 1927 figures. So if you dealt that today, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars that we would be looking at.